Cool. All right, everyone. Happy 2025 and welcome to Inner Join. This is a show where we dive deep into the world of data governance and data management. I'm your host, Shinji Kim, the founder and CEO of SelectStar. SelectStar is a data discovery and governance platform with an automated data catalog, lineage, and documentation. So today I'm very excited to have Trish Burns here, data leadership coach and consultant. Please comment on the chat if you have any questions for us during the show. And Trish, welcome to Inner Join.
Thank you, Shinji. It's great to be here.
Amazing. So, Trish, I always start with this question for all my guests. Tell us more about yourself. How did you get into data, and how did you end up focusing on data leadership as your subject matter expert?
Sure. So how did I get into data is a really good question. It was just before the global financial crisis. I had this really brilliant idea of doing a master's degree in applied finance.
Sorry, which global financial crisis?
2008.
Okay.
2008, 2009. The one that, I guess the big one, the early big one. But that's a good question. So yeah, I had the bright idea of doing a master's of applied finance back in my home country of Australia. My goal was to go into banking. I graduated at the point in time where the banks were hiring exactly 0 people, and all the graduate programs, etc., were closed. So I ended up shifting my plans, and I ended up working in an Australian resource company, oil and gas company, and I came on as a business analyst. And I think the term business analyst has changed over the years as well. At the time, the best way to describe it was as a person who gathers requirements from business users and translate those into technical documentation for engineers and project teams to go and build software. Specifically, it was on a CRM project. So I was a BA. That project was completed, and suddenly we had no one to look at the data. So I became the data analyst who was responsible for analyzing all the data that was collected in our CRM tool for this oil and gas company. So I ended up doing that for about 4 years. Afterwards, I got made redundant because there was a price crash in the oil price, and ended up coming to London. I planned on only coming to London for a couple of years, but I met my wife, and now it's been like a lot more than a couple of years. My first job in London was in banking, actually. Finally, I got there, working for Bank of America Merrill Lynch on their sales and trading floor for fixed income. It was a very heavy data pulling role, so working with a product called IBM Cognos and just pulling down tons and tons of financial data, producing reports. It was like doing heavy reps at the gym, just constantly pumping out insights and reports to go out to the sales desk managers and so forth. It was a job I really loved. I liked the work. It was really fascinating to me, learning about markets and financial products, but I didn't love the work culture necessarily, working very late into the evening. So I decided to go.
Were you still called business analyst there?
No. This was more of a data role. So I'd already shifted into. I worked within the COO function. Some people might be familiar with that. I don't think we called it a data analyst, but it was a very data-centric role. Working for a big bank like that is fascinating, but when you're in a data role and you're producing reports and insights to business heads, it can be a bit unsatisfying because you don't get to see the results of your insights. You don't necessarily know what decisions were made off the back of it, and you're a small cog in a very large machine. Yeah. So to me, that was great for me to cut my teeth and become, much stronger in my data analysis. But I wanted to be in a place where I was closer to the business, closer to the decision makers. I wanted to be essentially in the room with the COO, with the CEO, with the CFO, with those people who are making decisions. So I thought the best thing for me to do at this point in my career to get that experience and that exposure is to probably aim for startups. So I left banking and I went to a London-based startup, which was in health tech. And I got what I wanted. I was working with the founders and the COO and everything else like that, and pulling data. And it was also because of the exposure to those people, it was also more of a strategic role. So it wasn't just about being a so-called data analyst, but it was actually much more about helping the organization plan its approach to certain products, how it's going to build its strategy out for the coming year, and all sorts of things like that. It was a really fun job, but unfortunately I didn't last there very long because they were a startup, and startups are volatile. So I was made redundant. And through my network, I landed a job at Pizza Hut, Digital Ventures. So Pizza Hut, the well-known American company, had kicked off a tech venture, which the goal was to build e-commerce platforms around the world for all the countries that operate Pizza Hut franchises. And I was the first data hire. To cut to the end of the question, which was about how did I end up focusing on data leadership, my job at Pizza Hut was to grow the team, was to enable the capabilities within that large business for data. But my favorite part of that role, of course, was to manage my stakeholders, my team members, and the franchisees and the senior business leaders that I dealt with and that I helped. And that became something that I really wanted to focus on. I was never particularly technical, and I know that a lot of people on the call, as particularly given that what Select Star does, will be quite technical. That's not necessarily me. I've never been on that side of things so much, but just really enjoyed the strategic side of things, the stakeholder management side of things, the management side of things. And I'm just a very, very firm believer in data's power to drive businesses, much more than a lot of businesses will actually do and will leverage. So I wanted to become a kind of a mouthpiece for that belief that I have about the importance of data and the value that it can help businesses being more efficient, being more strategic, and also just looking around and seeing how data teams are treated and how they're oftentimes not particularly central to the business or strategic. I think is a missed opportunity for me. So it's something I've become very passionate about.
That's wonderful.
Sorry, it's a long answer.
I just also surprised that you said you worked at the Pizza Hut Ventures arm.
Yes.
And they were based in London? Or
yes,
were you working in a remote?
So people get confused by the term ventures because they often think it means investment in smaller companies. This was a digital business that was designed to build the e-commerce and restaurant tech capabilities outside of the United States. So the UK happens to be the second largest market for Pizza Hut outside of the United States. So they put the head office for the ventures team in London.
Very cool. Awesome. Yeah. So jumping into data leadership, you run a newsletter and a community called Effective Data Leadership, which I really love the title. I even used it for our call.
Yeah, thank you.
How would you describe the role of data leaders in companies? It is, comparably a new role to CTOs or CIOs, similar role. Maybe there are overlaps in some companies, but I think CDOs and CDAOs and just heads of data have definitely become a prominent, specific role in a lot of companies.
Yes.
I'd love to hear your definition and the roles and responsibilities that you see that are important and true in organizations today.
Yes, good question. So I like how you framed it at the beginning when you said that they're relatively new. We think about the structure of organizations. We've always had chief financial officers and chief operating officers and CEOs, etc., and CMOs as well. But data has come along much more recently, and to the idea of a chief data officer or something like that is far more recent. I wouldn't want to say when that started to pop up, but it's probably 15 years, 10 years maybe, where that role has sort of come to be. I could be wrong, and if I am wrong, I'm more than happy for someone to correct me. But for that reason, it's misunderstood, and its role within organizations is misunderstood. And data as a whole is largely also misunderstood. If we think about, I like to talk about the example of marketing. If we can think about marketing for a moment, I enjoyed the TV show. What was the marketing TV show? I forgot the name just for a sec. Mad Men, of course, which was all about the 1960s and how they built creatives and did their marketing campaigns and everything. And back then, when they created campaigns and marketing ads, they would just go out to the public. They wouldn't have, apart from maybe a focus group or the feedback from the client, they have zero information for how that campaign or marketing asset is going to do out in the wild. And the only information they would get would be after the fact when they see sales. And they would hopefully then attribute those sales back to their ad campaign. Data has turned marketing, for example, completely on its head. We get instantaneous feedback. We can A/B test marketing creative in seconds or minutes or hours, days, weeks, but just very quick feedback depending on the types of the scale of our audience and the scales of our capabilities. And the power of data is immense to understand these things. And lots of businesses have very, very effectively capitalized on that, but a lot haven't. And a lot still think that data is something crazy and wild, and that most of the business will operate like madmen, like not just marketing, but all of their institutions. It's gut, it's focus groups, it's human opinion, it's how I feel about the market or my connections and everything else like that. We haven't managed to make a splash as much as we should have. We haven't made our way into changing the culture about how businesses think about data. For many of them, it's still something that's highly technical, that belongs in the basement, that isn't, on par with the role and purpose of a CFO or the role and purpose of a CEO. And so while data is misunderstood, so too is the role of a data leader within organizations. I believe the role of data leaders within organizations is a business role, not a technical role. We all use technology. CEOs use technologies, finance people use technology, HR people use technology. All these people have tools, but none of them are assessed their effectiveness to do their job by their ability to use those tools. But for some reason, data people are. Data people are measured by their ability to implement technology, to create warehouses, to query data. What we're not measured by is our ability to impact businesses, and by data's ability to impact businesses. And that is what I see as being a challenge, and also core to the role of a data leader. A data leader is a business person, and the tool that they have in their hands is data.
Totally makes sense. Sorry if my connection is a little jittery, but even if I step away, I'll be back. So you can stay tuned.
I'll just keep talking.
Yes, that's great. I think that's a great point, that the tool that the data leaders have is data, and it is their main goal to drive impact to businesses. In many cases, I kind of see it similarly for like CTO or VP of engineering type of position. They are expected to know technology inside and out, but at the end of the day, they do have to drive and build product that impacts business as well. Yeah. So for data leaders, what do you see as main goals, and how these impacts generally get measured in organization today? I think many times when companies initially create a role of head of data, I think a lot of organizations do acknowledge the importance of data, but they may not know how that data is going to make the business better, or they can infer that, if I knew or if I had more data, I should be able to make better decisions.
Yeah.
But I just don't know how we're going to have that in front of me in the format that I need to see. So we need somebody that is who knows data. That's kind of like where I'm coming from, but I would love to hear your thoughts on how these roles get instituted, and what are the main objectives and impact that you see that data leaders create in organizations today?
Yeah, so I think data leaders they're not exclusively data people. They don't have to have the term data in their role. I don't think it has to be a CDO that is a data leader always, or it has to be a VP of data that is a data leader in any case. The reality is that, as with my example around marketing and how that's changed to become performance marketing, which is very data driven, all roles within business today require data, that they produce data and they need data to analyze how they've done. They need KPIs to measure their performance, and data needs to also inform their strategies. Now, you can't immediately require someone who hasn't had a training in data to suddenly know how to do all of those things, right? If they're in a non-data role. But a data leader is someone who helps people accomplish those things. So they help the wider business utilize data for better decision making, and they help the wider business devise a strategy that is data informed and data driven. I forgot what I was going to say just then. Yeah, sorry, I'll leave it there.
Yeah, no, that's great. So I think that when a lot of people get into data, like you who started as a business analyst, or someone who started from software engineering, but got into data engineering and got into maybe more analytics work, or someone who has been trained and been working as a data scientist, when you think about like a data as a career, what are some of the things that you see that is beyond the building the data teams and the tooling and systems? Because in organizations, those are kind of like the first building blocks to have in order to collect and store and create reports. So once those are there, or sometimes you may hear other business leaders saying, "Oh, the reports are not correct, we don't get enough data," like these things come through. But like what is kind of like the like main parts that you see that data leaders have to do, like when they kind of get put into that organization, like in their first few months?
You mentioned in your question establishing foundational data technology and the ability to feed data out to teams. Personally, I think that's the last step. It's very important, don't get me wrong. Technology is an essential part of what data people need to do, but we actually need to work backwards from that. The problem really begins with what are the business's information needs, solving that question first. So a data leader needs to come in, understand the business. They need to be very familiar with how the organization makes money, who the organization's customers are, what market that organization operates in, and what is the organization's overall strategy. Then, and the other piece, by the way, is culture. Do we have a place that wants to be able to access data? Do we have a place where the leadership is pro data, where teams want to collaborate with information and data? Have we got an environment in which data will survive? Because I can tell you, a lot of organizations will invest a lot of money in data capabilities and they'll produce dashboards, but that organization won't be fertile land for data to survive and to be effective. And then we end up with data teams that are treated as service desks and everything else. So first of all, do we have a good culture? And do we have an understanding of what the business's information needs are? Do we know what the strategy is? Once we know what those things are, then the data leader's core job, therefore, at that point, is to create a data strategy. And a data strategy will mention the people that are required in the organization, the processes that are required in the organization, and the technology, lastly, that is required. So the technologies that we do end up investing in and the infrastructures that we create and the data that we collect and store and all those other bits and pieces need to be very much purpose-driven and aligned with strategic goals that the organization has. Largely, as I see it, organizations will go, we need data, let's go and build a warehouse, let's go and collect as much data as possible, And now let's ask ourselves, how is that data valuable? How can that data be help us drive our strategy or help us answer questions that we have? That is the wrong way to do it. It's backwards.
Sure. I mean, at the same time, you may start from the business angle, but as you are collecting data, you may see, oh, we could also use this data for this other purpose or that other purpose.
Totally.
So we should also collect the data or store
Yeah.
them. And I think that is just something that happens naturally because in a way you're like iterating on top of that too. So let's say like you've kind of implemented a data strategy. Now you have a data team, you have some, some foundation. What's next?
To enable the business to achieve its strategy by providing by supporting it on its information needs, and also over time, helping the organization design its ongoing strategy off the back of the data that it's now collected.
Mm-hmm.
So data informs. So I see it as a circle with strategy at the top. Data informs strategy. Strategy is measured by KPIs and outcomes and so forth. More data is produced. That new data feeds back into the new strategy, and so on and so forth. And you get this flywheel rather, that gets quicker and quicker and quicker as data becomes much more central to the organization's processes.
Makes sense. So from what I'm understanding, their first step is for the data leader to understand and have deep into how the business runs and the business's goal. And
Absolutely.
then they need to create their data strategy, the team, the processes, and the technology. And then after implementation, they need to have the rest of the organization to actually utilize the all the data foundation that they've laid out.
Yeah, well, where possible.
Where possible.
Sometimes they're reluctant to utilize data capabilities.
And hopefully that feeds into the next cycle of the business goals and other operation that may also feed the data leader to figure out any iterations that they may need to make or implement on top of the initial strategy.
Yes.
Is that right?
I think yes. It's harder. It's easier said than done. I think that a lot of companies actually get caught up in just the first steps and getting out of that. Are we building the right thing for this organization? Do we know what the strategy? Like, that's a very difficult step to get out of. And I dare say that it's commonly touted that CDO is one of the shortest tenured leadership roles out there. And this is because they fail quite often to do this. It's easy for me to stand here, someone who's not currently in a company, and say these things. This is how you do it, but it's extremely difficult to achieve. And I think I talked about culture at the top of what I said. You have to have a culture inside an organization that is ready to use data in the right ways. That is probably the hardest part. And I think I invite anyone watching right now to go and look for a CDO job description that's been advertised somewhere. Go and find a CDO JD and read it. What you will see in most cases, I'm going to say 9 out of 10, is they will ask that person to have strong data visualization skills, 20 years of SQL, 25 years of Python, and all of these other highly technical skills. They are hiring a chief data officer. Are they going to ask the chief financial officer to have the same level of hands-on with that domain's technologies and capabilities and tools? Probably not, because you're hiring, a strategic manager at this point. But that's not how businesses are thinking about with a chief data officer. They want to builder.
Yeah, I mean, like the cover page that I used for the event was like something that depicts that, because you said what the job title says or job description says versus what the job actually is, which was actually very surprising to me. Yeah, I mean, I wanted to confirm that because like my follow-up question from there was, what phase do you see data leaders, struggle with the most? you mentioned data, the like changing or building the culture, if that didn't exist before, is the hardest part.
Yeah.
But is that where they fall in the most? Because that wasn't actually part of the process. It's something that you kind of have to have. And I'm sure the organization have hired the data leader. Maybe that wasn't the intention though. So,
Yeah.
so maybe you're saying that here, if there's no data culture from the beginning, it's very hard to change.
You've got to create an environment that is conducive to the success of data. You've got to have an organization that wants to use data, that wants to have data, and they all may say, we want to be cutting edge, we want AI, we want to be doing all of these things, we want to have data, and they probably do realize they may genuinely believe that, but they misunderstand the purpose of data. They treat it as a purely technical discipline. They invest in purely technical people. Those people, because they're purely technical, they don't have necessarily a business mindset or experience. They go and invest in cutting edge technologies, and they spend a lot of money on those things. And then, 12, 18 months later, the CFO comes around and says, where's the ROI on this? How has this helped us deliver our strategic goals? It hasn't. It's just cost a ton of money. Data teams continue to be seen as a cost center and not a value add. That chief data officer is seen to have failed. They get fired or they move on because they're frustrated, and then they do it all again. They bring in another technical person to do all this.
So I think this is an area that a lot of people have also mentioned and people acknowledge. So let's say if I found a company that actually does, want to support and make sure that it may not be perfect. There's no such thing as perfect data culture, but it's not just about the technology. In that phases, where do you see the data leaders fall in or struggle with the most, and why?
Okay, so I've got 6 various common challenges for data leaders that, as I see it. So oftentimes their teams are under-resourced. That's a very difficult thing usually.
Okay.
Data teams are very bad at selling their success and demonstrating that they've contributed to the business's outcomes. So there's a lack of recognition for the contribution that comes from data teams. Data leaders are often hands-on, and so they're in a player-coach mode. So, 50 to 70% of their week is actually spent coding rather than, managing their team and being more strategic and working on projects and doing higher level thinking. So getting out of that mode. They're also excluded still from strategic decision making. Even if that place has a pretty good culture, it's often the case. Data teams are broadly seen as support functions rather than business partners. So there's this idea of we just shoot queries over to the data team and they will do what we want. They'll give us the information that we need. And and as I've mentioned, data being seen as a technical discipline. So if you had a place where the culture was a little bit better and data was seen as a business partner, it was seen as a business function more than a technical one, then I think you're in a much better position for a data leader to succeed. Certainly.
Makes sense. So those are the most common challenges. Can you tell us about how your clients have turned that around and things that you would recommend them to do for each of those challenges?
Oh, for each of the challenges. So I think I would like to start with one very easy to solve one, which is a lack of recognition for contribution of data teams.
Mm-hmm.
I love when people are showing me their CVs, right? They're not that I do CV coaching or anything like that, but what I do often see CVs and resumes, and people will just list out the things they did. I delivered this project, or I delivered this technology, or I ran a team of 6 people, and they don't ever talk about the impacts that they had. And I hear this every time from data leaders. I can't provide the impact to the revenue or efficiencies because I wasn't the only one that did it. Other people helped me. My team played a bit of the role here, and then the other team did the delivery. a team is not about individual performance. It's about team performance. It's about everybody in the organization doing their part to achieve a strategic outcome.
Yeah.
You played a part in helping the organization achieve its goals. Own it. But there's this fear with data leaders. Oh, no. I'm too far removed from the actual impacts to actually say that it was mine, because I don't want people to think I'm the only one that did it. No one thinks that, right? A salesperson, for example, is at the cutting edge. They're at the customer face, right? They're the ones who make the money. But they can't do their job unless they've had the support of a CRM tool. They've had the marketing team doing all the marketing campaigns, had the data people making sure the data is clean and good, high quality. So when they go out and they have those conversations, they've got all the tools necessary to win and to win that client and to make that sale. And we have no problem saying, well done, you made a sale, you brought in X million pounds of revenue into the organization, congratulations. But we don't say congratulations to the people who made that possible. The data people in that, who are upstream of that accomplishment, who played a very important role in helping that person deliver that revenue. And I think that data people could, turn things around very easily if they just became a lot more comfortable with owning their contribution to the organization and selling their own success. And one of the strategies for doing this that there are a number of strategies actually for doing this that I encourage my clients to do. And that is to, one of them is to have like lunch and learn sessions where you can talk to the business about how your data team is contributing to different projects and some of the wins that you've had. Another one I've seen work really well is a newsletter, an internal newsletter. And I always encourage my clients to team up with internal affairs or internal PR, internal comms, to create a beautiful monthly or quarterly publication. Sorry, I lost my words there. Publication about what the data team has done and how they've contributed. The other one is give love to get love. Data leaders should be out there acknowledging the performance of other teams and saying, you guys have killed it this quarter, particularly where they've partnered with the data team to do that. So if they are
already measuring it. So
exactly, we've got the data. We've told you, this is how well you've done. Congrats. And when you do that, it comes back to you. People go, oh, we couldn't have done it without your guys' support. You did a fantastic job. And that creates this partnership environment where we are one-to-one with the others. We're not subservient to them. We are their partners. We help them succeed. We acknowledge that. They help us succeed.
I love those ideas, especially around just, having more of those insights to be communicated internally.
Yeah.
What I find is that in organizations, when people say that they want to use data, they may not, but they don't know exactly what to ask or what to look into.
Yeah.
This is like a kind of one of the like a rooting questions or problem around data discovery. It's not just about where to find the data. They may not even know what to ask. But having something to look at, because our head of data sends out this newsletter, that really sparks ideas in other people.
Exactly. And that leads me to another example of how you can improve the success of data teams, and that's to do with how we operate, how we actually work with other teams. So I encounter a lot of businesses that operate their data team as a service desk, like an IT service desk,
or platform like team or center of excellence, because each business might have their own analytics teams.
Maybe. Yeah, exactly. But whether it's central or even distributed, it doesn't matter. It's how you respond to requests for data from throughout the business. And you made a really good point, Shinji, just a moment ago when you said people throughout the business don't necessarily know what question to ask. But data teams do a really terrible job of making it clear how you should ask questions to them and what's available. we as data people, we know what data is available, where it's stored, how high quality it is, how fresh it is, or how old. And we also know what we don't have. We know what gaps in the data there are, and where we need to invest into fixing those things. Why do we sit around and wait for people to ask us questions when they don't have a clue about all the information that I just listed? Why do we do that? And it's so common that data teams are reactive to business requests and not proactive to partnering with businesses to help them solve, to do discovery, to understand what keeps them up at night, which, by the way, is an excellent question. You should always be asking your business stakeholders what keeps you up at night. Why aren't we proactive about this and saying, look, what's going on in your area? What's your market look like? What are your competitors doing? What products do we have that are exciting and new and coming on? What problems are you experiencing? That is one of the best questions we as data people can ask. And the reason I like that question so much is because instead of asking, how can I help you? Or waiting to be asked for help, we go to them and say, what problems are you experiencing? And then they describe to us a problem. Whereas if we allow them to come to us, they typically come to us with a description for a solution, or as I call a prescribed solution. Now, why would we allow a stakeholder who is not au fait with the data that we have, who's not familiar with what data we don't have and everything else I listed, to be the one to tell us what they need from the data? Better yet, we get familiar with their business and we get curious about the problems that they're trying to solve. And when we combine their domain expertise with our knowledge of what data is available and how it can be compiled, we win. But when we create a one-way street where we're completely downstream from them and it's all intake, the business loses.
Yeah, for sure. Actually, there's a great comment that Christopher Gambale have actually mentioned, saying that so often people just don't peel the onion back enough, asking about why to get to the root of the situation before they start working.
Yeah, it makes me think of the 5 whys. If anyone's heard of the 5 whys, just to keep asking why. It might get annoying. You might sound like a 5-year-old, but you usually get to the actual question that they're trying to uncover. So thank you, Christopher. That's great.
Yeah, I think the challenge and the balance that a lot of data leaders have to make is because they usually are like flooded with questions and asks from the business. Whereas, these questions also don't necessarily have a long shelf life. Like they have that question, they got this curiosity, they, want to figure it out or look at the data and get some ideas. And next week, it's not going to be as relevant.
No.
So that's why I think, data leaders also invest in more platform, more self-service. I'm curious to hear your thoughts about that approach versus, because like keep asking the business leaders about why and truly trying to understand where they're coming from and to align the data collection and the strategy implementation around that does take time.
It does. So you're talking a little bit, I think, about data democratization, which I am mixed on, I'll be honest. But just another point to make, I think, based on your question, is that in a lot of organizations, data people solve little questions. Our job is to solve small little questions that are someone popped into someone's head. Hey, I need to know this now, and that's fine. But our job should actually be to solve big questions. And if we're available, we make ourselves available to solve every single little question that comes our way. We are unavailable to solve big questions, big business challenges.
Yeah,
and I don't think data teams should actually be all that available for little questions. If something is going to pop into someone's head and it's super timely and they need an answer for it today, and then tomorrow it won't be an issue, that's not going to hit my radar. No way. I'm sorry, you might be very important, but we're here trying to solve much bigger, more important strategic questions, not your little brain fart. So there has to be a prioritization, there has to be a strong leader in place, someone who can say no to stakeholders, even to important stakeholders, when they know that those micro requests are actually going to be more of a pain and a distraction overall for the business, because you're taking the team away from much more, maybe not so short-term, long-term valuable work that you won't see tangible outcomes immediately, but over time you will. That's where we really need data teams to be focused.
Mm-hmm.
What was the first thing I was starting to answer before I moved on to that one? Sorry.
We're talking about kind of solutions to those common issues that data leaders and data teams face, and I was asking you about specific, for each of them, how do you solve it?
Yeah, so processes I think are important. A data team can't go from not serving a business, from serving a business one day to the very next day not serving the business and saying, hang on, no, we're going to go and solve big business challenges. the data leader and the whole team would be fired. It can't happen like that. But when we have an inundation of micro requests, as you described it, they're flooded with requests, we have to manage our way out of that by managing up. And the way to do that is with process. And I get in trouble because I am actually a fan of formalized data intake processes, whereas a lot of people will tell me until they're blue in the face, my stakeholders are never going to use a form. My stakeholders are just going to call me, or they're just going to Slack me. Let them. Send them the link to the form every time they Slack you, and then block them. Do not take no for an answer. And the reason you're not taking no for an answer is not because you're a butthead and you want to be difficult. It's because you need to protect the team. As the leader of the data organization, probably one of your top responsibilities is to enable your team to do good work. If you let noise trickle down through you or past you or around you to impact your team's productivity, contribution, and capability, you failed, or you're failing. You need to be the one to turn that around and to basically become the barrier between nonsense and enabling your team to focus on really important work. So processes are important. We need to know, the most important question for me, apart from what problem are you solving, is, does this align strategically? Is the thing that you're wanting us to spend time on, to take time away from what else we were doing, a strategic priority? Point to the strategy. Where does this line? If it's just, as often is the case, someone in the boardroom had a brain fart that they wanted, I wonder if, let's ask the data team. No, I'm not doing that. Yeah. Come to me with a strategy and say, where does this align? And we'll do it.
Yeah. I have follow-up questions from what you were saying earlier, and about this too, actually. Mm-hmm. First and foremost, in companies, the larger they get, the strategy gets more complex. There are many different business lines and goals that may also, it's like almost parallel track, could be almost independent. And in a way, we recognize data as one of the a fundamental building blocks in business operations. So how do you encourage data leaders to come up with their data strategy when there are just a lot different directions that businesses have, because it's in a larger environment?
So that's a difficult environment to operate in, certainly, where you've got is the question where an organization where the strategy is complex, or is it one where it's not clear?
Complex. So there are things that the sales team is doing this way, marketing team is doing this way, or it could be this business line needs more faster life cycle of the deployment, whereas this other business line needs support on mitigating customer requests. You see what I mean?
Yeah. So what's the question specifically? How do we?
Yeah. How would you how do you recommend data leaders on this? Is it just also coming down to what's the prioritization ranking, or are there like ways that you like, or framework that you use to try to prioritize better on this?
So I think of it, if the question is about data strategy, I think that the term data strategy is often confusing. We really should just be saying strategy, and then how does data have play a role in achieving it. There's not necessarily a data strategy that's a wholly separate thing to the rest of the strategy. It's just the part that's we're responsible for helping to contribute towards and deliver. Like similarly, marketing will have their role to play in delivering the business's overall strategy, and HR, of course, will have their own goals and responsibilities in delivering that, whatever it may be. So to say a data strategy is its own thing and that it's separate, I think is a bit confusing for a lot of people. In the case where you've got something that's highly complex, I think on a case-by-case basis, we'd have to look at what that was. But you need to workshop these things and bring them all together, because there are going to be moving parts that are quite complicated. And yeah, if there's too much work needed and not enough data team and resources to go around, well, that's perhaps an argument for more investment in data, or it's an argument for prioritization and reducing scope of some of those other contributors to strategy.
Yeah.
And that will fall to the data leader to own, I think, to have the scenario where a data leader is saying yes to everything, that without those resources and without those conversations on priority is going to set that person up for failure and for that data team to look like they're ineffective. It's a big risk. So leadership is required here from the data leader.
Yeah. And one more follow-up question from one of the things that you said earlier is more distributed data teams. When there are data teams that are embedded in business lines, and you are in a position of on a more centralized kind of data team that supports those different business lines, what are the ways to work with and manage those teams? Because they don't necessarily report in your organization directly.
No, they don't. And I'm not necessarily one way or another in terms of the structure. So if that's the best way for that organization to work, then fantastic. The Center of Excellence is something that people talk about a lot, which is very important to make sure that there's consistency around certain elements of how data is created. What we don't want is multiple different data cultures being established within each of the disparate domains. We don't want the data team that exists inside the finance division to have a completely different approach to definitions, to how data is presented and stored. We want consistency as much as possible around data governance, data quality, systems, tools. We want economies of scale. Procurement teams will tell you they do not want 50 different dashboarding tools to be used throughout the business. We want one. So yeah, there needs to be some degree of authority in that central team, in that central data leader, over how those teams operate. Even if there's not a direct managerial line, I think there needs to be a dotted line.
Yeah, and also it's really a partnership between the business leaders and the data leader. So
yeah, I also believe if it's possible that you should rotate data people around different departments where possible. Sometimes you might have someone who is very technical and needs to be in a technical division, and someone who's got a strong finance mind and does really well over there. But maybe in a smaller organization with a hub and spoke model, it's not a bad idea to rotate. It's particularly beneficial, I think, in product environments where we have different squads in a tech company, where you might have multiple different squads with their own data analyst. It's great to pull a data analyst out of the top of funnel experience or whatever part of the experience that product focuses on and put them in another area of the experience, because they bring a different perspective. They may see something that the other data analyst hasn't seen or become blind to. and also they upskill, they improve their knowledge of the overall product.
Mm-hmm. Do you see companies actually implementing those rotational programs for analysts?
Yeah, definitely. I have a client right now who it's not always politically easy. Sometimes the data analysts don't like being shifted out of their teams. I only like working on this part of the product. I don't want to go and work on that part of the product. But unless they're a total specialist or a specialist in a specific thing that they're tasked with, it's not really.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great idea, actually. Yeah. Just understanding business as a whole, they can actually upskill, not like on the technical sense, but as like understanding the business better. And train others too.
And as a leader, our job is to challenge and upskill the people that we manage and look after. So they may not be happy about it right away, but in the long run, they're going to learn something and they're going to become better data analysts because of it.
Yeah, for sure. Any other common challenges that you want to pick out with like the creative solution that you've worked with your clients in the past?
This one is probably not going to be the case in large enterprises, more so in smaller businesses and middle, like senior data leader roles, but not necessarily at the top. It's the player coach mode. I've spoken to people who are VPs of data, so very high up, not the top, but very high up, who will spend 70 to 90% of their time coding, and the rest of their time, half a day or 1 day a week, managing their team and attending meetings. Not that it's just that 1 day, it's always scattered about, right? It's like a couple hours here, a couple hours there. That's a really difficult place to succeed, to be in and to succeed as a data leader. And the sooner you turn that around, the better. I see a conflict in a lot of people that I talk to who have come from being an individual contributor, who have now moved into a leadership role, and they struggle not being an IC anymore. And to those people, I really want to ask them, I do, does being no longer an IC make you happy? You liked being an IC. Do you want to continue being an IC? Why do you feel you have to go into a managerial role? So that's a question for them. But when people are in those scenarios and they are doing 80% of their work is IC, I ask them, what's your ideal amount? They'll tell me 5 to 10%. I want to get this right down. I want to spend much more of my time solving bigger problems and bigger questions rather than being in the code or in the configuring and everything. So for them, the challenge lies in becoming better delegators, becoming better at managing their own managers, because their managers themselves might be ICs that work this way, and
or expect the data person to head of data to answer questions right away, or
So my approach to that is to be political about it and have an open conversation with your manager about what your goals are and how you want to contribute as a leader and as a manager. So it's about creating a plan and a roadmap for you to move past that, to better delegate. Maybe you need to hire more staff into your team if that's the case. Can we have that conversation? Are there projects or tasks that are coming across my desk because I happen to be the best at it, whereas people in my team don't have the experience yet? So let's train them. Let's give them this challenge. Let's make them take it on. It doesn't have to be overnight. It can be a slow changeover, but you need to make sure that you're not responsible for, you're not a key person dependency, that if you were hit by a bus, that piece of work wouldn't have anyone to do it. You need to make sure that the team can manage without you. In a way, you've got to do yourself out of a job, kinda. You've got to.
Yeah, that's the goal of anyone that is going on the management track, I would say. Always and making yourself
be the dumbest person in the room.
Yeah,
make everybody else smarter than you.
Yeah, for sure. We have about 6 minutes left.
Okay.
Now, I do have one question as we're closing. This wasn't my question should before, but the whole trend of last year and this year is going to be all AI.
Yep.
A lot of organizations do have AI, implementing, applying AI, being AI ready as part of their strategy, part of their goals. What are the things that you believe data leaders need to do or need to put into their strategy to make the organization more AI ready?
Well, the first thing is data quality and governance need to be addressed in a lot of businesses. They're starting in a bad place. Often it's not been the sexiest area of data for a very long time, and there aren't that many pure data governance specialists. So that's a priority. I think the data leaders need to address if their companies want to leverage AI. The other thing is with AI that I hear a lot about is that there's a lot of AI FOMO. So why are we doing AI? Of course, I'm all for it, and it's fantastic, and businesses rightly should be leveling up with AI. But what is the outcome we're trying to achieve here? Are we making sure that the decisions that we make, as is the case with every technology choice, are they strategic? Are they helping us achieve the goals of the business? And are they pushing us closer to a place where we're generating more value to shareholders, we're making our customers happier, we're achieving our goals? If we can draw lines between the projects in AI that we want to do and those things, then I think we're in a lot better place. And a data leader may very well have to be the voice of that, because AI will very much often fall within their purview, as it will within their engineering teams.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome. What are some of the things that you are looking forward to in 2025 then?
Okay, well, very exciting. This isn't even data related. I hope you don't mind me saying it, but I'm starting a book club actually for leaders and people who want to be leaders. Reading books around management, entrepreneurship, technology, and personal development. It's called the Badass Bookshelf, and it's launching in February. So I'm really excited about that. We just opened our doors last week, and we've had over 100 members join up, which has been really cool.
Very cool.
So I'm really excited for that. Yeah, I have quite a few clients at the moment, so I'm just excited to keep working with them, and of course acquire some new clients if anyone's looking for some support. But keep working with them, keep delivering great outcomes for them, and in April I'm going to go home to my home country for a month, have some sunshine. Yeah, that's what I'm looking forward to largely. How about you?
Amazing. Well, I think there's just a lot happening in the industry, so I'm curious how this all shakes out, especially as more companies trying to adopt AI, getting their data system, data platform, data to be ready for AI to be leveraged for. I think it's a really exciting time to be in the industry.
This industry is going to explode. Data governance, AI. We're those of us who are making our bread here are going to be very busy, I think.
Yeah.
And it might not always be smooth sailing, and we might not always find the path forward simple, but we're in the right place.
Yeah, for sure. Amazing. Well, thanks so much for joining me today, Tris. I had a great conversation with you. And thanks everyone who's joining here and still staying strong. So yeah, have a great weekend and talk to you later.
Talk to you later. Thanks, everybody. Have a great weekend.